it's week 1 of season 8 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Opie's First Love. Opie's friend Arnold is turning 13, and his parents are letting him have a stag or drag party. That's where the boys can come along, or they can bring a date. And Andy tells Aunt Dee he bets that Opie is going to take Mary Alice Carter, because he's been stuck on her since 1st grade. And Opie tells his pa that Mary Alice Carter is a touchy subject for him. And he tells Arnold at school the next day he's going to ask Mary Alice after school, but he's nervous. And Arnold's going to ask her girlfriend named Iris. And then Arnold invites their classmate Greg to the party and tells him he can bring a date. And Greg says, yeah, I've been dating for a long time. There's nothing to it. But in class, we can see that Mary Alice is looking at Greg. So when Opie brings up the topic of the party with her after school, she gets away from him before he can ask her. And then we see later, she's telling her girlfriend Iris that she wants to see if Greg asks her first. And then later, Andy asks Opie whether he's going to hold Mary Alice's hand. And Andy laughs. And Opie don't think that's funny. And then on the day before the party, we see that Mary Alice is deciding with the girlfriend, Iris, that since Greg hasn't asked her yet, he's probably not going to ask her. And now she should say yes to Opie as second, preference. So he does ask her, and she says yes. And so Opie runs home and tells his pa and Aunt Dee that he's going to go drag with Mary Alice Carter. So Andy takes him out, and he buys him a new suit. And then Opie calls Mary Alice and tells her his pa is going to drive them to the party. They'll pick her up at 7. And she says okay. But after she hangs up, we see that Greg comes over to Mary Alice's house, and he does ask her to the party. And she says yes. And her friend Iris says, what are we going to tell Opie? And Mary Alice says, oh, I'll think of something. And on the day of the party, Opie is practicing up on his dance moves, and his dad comes in and tells him to go pick up his suit, because the alterations are probably done by now. But then Mary Alice calls Opie, and she tells him a story. She says she forgot that Greg asked her first, so she won't be able to go with Opie. And he's real disappointed. And later at the courthouse, Goober and Andy ask Opie whether he's going to kiss Mary Alice, and he leaves without answering. And at supper, he's real sad. And then he leaves the table, and he tells his Aunt Dee and his pa that he's not going to go. So his dad goes up to his room, and Opie says he has a headache, and he says Greg can take Mary Alice to the party. So Opie says he doesn't even have to call her. And his pa realizes what happened. So he tells Opie he got stood up by a girl once when he was expecting to take her to a party. So he decided to go alone, and he acted like it didn't bother him. And he ended up having a great time. And he tells Opie if his headache gets better, maybe Opie could go alone. So Opie thinks about it, and then he puts on his new suit and he does go alone. His pa and Helen drive him over. And then when the guy at the party says to him, I heard what Mary Alice did to you, he says, oh, it's okay. There are a lot of fish in the sea. And then he sees Mary Alice, and she says she did a terrible thing to him. And he says, oh, it's okay. I don't get mad about little things. And she says she's not having a good time. Greg has been ignoring her and dancing with all these other girls, and she's finding out that he's really conceited. And so Opie sits down with her, and they start having a good time. And then when Andy and Helen come to take Opie out, he brings Mary Alice out with him. And he says they realize they should have been together all along. And then he says, since it's our first double date together, let's all go to the diner. My treat. And then later that night, Opie sets up another double date for the four of them next weekend. We'll see you next week for episode 2 of season 8.